Hi, welcome to Senior Savvy Cannabis. This is Catherine Goldberg. Thank you for joining us for this end of year special. Normally, I talk about much more positive things. And if you've been listening, you can tell that I care deeply about health and wellness and alleviating suffering. And cannabis is just one way that helps me and a lot of other people do that, right? Like cannabis is the catalyst that allows the meditation to happen, that allows movement to be easier, that allows one to have an appetite. So the cannabis has always been, I never wanted it to be like center of attention because there are all these other tools that are equally as cool, even though I do realize this is a podcast about cannabis. So with that said, I was planning on making my end of year predictions, but something exciting happened this week, and we are going to pivot, and I'm going to tell you about it. So I live in California. We have legal medical cannabis and legal recreational cannabis. It's the same cannabis. It's just like taxed differently. So this summer, and by the way, when you buy legal cannabis, and I pay 25% tax for legal cannabis, it's because it comes with a QR code that you can scan and you can see the testing results. They're called COAs, like Certificate of Authenticity. So when you scan it, you can see, because all the weed that's sold in California has to be tested through the lab. And you assume that what you're buying and paying all this tax for is clean weed. And sometimes it is, and a lot more of the time it's not. So before I alarm everyone, this is bad. I'm not going to beat around the bush about that. But unless you're immunocompromised or have respiratory issues, it's not life-threatening bad. It's not good. And it's good that we all know about it and it's coming to the forefront of attention because it's consumed, like, because we vote with our dollars. And when we stop spending our voting dollars on certain products, the companies will either get the message and hopefully change, or they will not get the message and go under. So, it's like the Wild West out here. So I wrote a whole thing this week about the loopholes that the legal cannabis companies are using to pass their testing. For example, and you can read it, I'm going to put a link, but it's like, so I interviewed a bunch of industry people who have worked on the growing side and just heard their stories. And one grower said that in the legal grow, there was like some drywall debris that fell on the plants and got all over the plants. Okay. So they send out the plants for testing, and because the lab isn't testing for drywall, it passes, and then it's sold. And then the reason, by the way, and it's an important issue. This is why we're serious about it, and this is why change needs to happen. And if change is not able to happen, we will make the changes as consumers and so on, right? Because we're not going to put up with this for too much longer. So that's one extreme example. And of course, not all companies do that. A lot of companies, I'm sure, have very safe growing practices. In fact, I reached out to one of the biggest manufacturers, Curaleaf, and said, hey, like, can you tell me about what you guys do to have safe cannabis? And their PR person got back to me within 12 hours and said, thank you so much. They don't want to comment. We're going to pass on commenting. I was assuming they're safe. I'm not assuming they're not. I'm just saying that, like, transparency, people need to be weighing in on this stuff. So, and then I'll tell you one more thing about the testing. You just read the article if you want all the details. But for example, let's say you grow 100 pounds of cannabis. Okay, well, 100 pounds of cannabis isn't going to be tested at the lab. You're gonna pull a tiny sample to test. It's reasonable. That's how testing is done. But the thing is, the grower can pick the tiny sample. So if there is like mold and debris and whatnot on one bud, and there's another bud that, like, because of different conditions, looks perfectly fine, which bud do you think the company is going to send to the testing facility to be tested? Like, it's not like it was randomly selected, you know? So so anyway, so earlier this summer in July, LA Times with Weed Week published this investigation that they conducted where they tested like a ton of products and found that about half of them were contaminated with pesticides. However, because LA Times is behind a paywall, no one knew. I mean, we assumed, but like, I'm not paying for LA Times, so I haven't even read it. It's so here's the thing that's interesting, right? So I published this last week, and I linked to their article because they did a really good investigation. And like 2 days later, there's a company that I deeply respect, and I'm going to share this as a testament to how to be a good industry player and how to do the right thing, even when it's hard. Okay. So there's a company, Jetty. Jetty is fabulous. Okay. Jetty basically finds small craft farms where farmers have good integrity and growing practices, and they they buy up the weed from all the small farms, and then they process it and they brand it and whatnot, and they sell it at the dispensary, and it's really good weed. And I'm going to keep on buying it, but I'm going to read you what they posted on Instagram because it's like, I was getting all these messages about it. It's really exciting. Okay, so basically, Jetty put out a text over Instagram and said that, I'm going to read it. The pesticides called out in the LA Times article are unregulated. We have done all the required testing. We had no way to know that these compounds were in our products until the LA Times article in July 2024. Okay? I'm going to elaborate on that because you may have questions as well. This pesticide issue, well, hold on. Oops. They're pledging to do better. I believe them. And by the way, they're stepping out in front of this when they technically didn't even do anything wrong. So, but this is what they said, okay? And this is why it's a good example. The current regulations tell us what can't be used. This list gets outdated quickly. Regulators are struggling to keep up with all the new pesticides that are entering the market. Okay. So what that means is that, like, this is a really complicated issue, right? Because when you're growing things for agriculture, bugs come, pests come. Someone, actually a winemaker, responded to my article and said that, like, if you think that the wine you're buying is just crushed grapes, like, you are very, very mistaken. And someone else commented that, like, that, there's this issue with mold on cannabis. Yes, it's an issue, but there are mold spores in the atmosphere. Like, we're breathing in mold. It just is, but we can do better. And I think it's more for people who, like, the thing is, maybe I'll say like a third of the people who will learn this are going to say, oh, yeah, okay, then not change how they're buying, not change their spending practices. I think a third are going to be like, ooh, I'm going to go ask my bud tender, like, hopefully, like, maybe they have like some insight into, like, hey, is there like a craft farm? Is there like a small farm that I could get my cannabis from through your shop? And then I think the other third, which I fall into that category at this point, is that after consuming legal cannabis for as long as I have, I'm over it. I'm over spending the money. I'm over it. I'm totally over it. I'm over it. I'm over the shops not having the strains I need to function at my best. And that's a whole other issue because it's harder to, because I personally like sativas. Those are the kinds that are very clear headed and give you energy. And those plants, first of all, are not as popular with most people. Most people want to use cannabis to relax. And second, those plants actually take a lot longer to grow and they produce less yield. So, from a business point, I understand why shops don't always have sativas. With that said, I'm going to start a home grow. I'm going to do it in a tiny, tiny little tent, and I'm going to do 2 plants, and I'm going to get clones. And I will document the entire process and teach you how to do it because I've had all these wonderful growers come in and say, like, this has been going on for years. Like, you got to grow your own. And I understand that's not a project everyone wants to undertake. Totally get that. But it's really delightful to watch plants grow. I've grown some outside just from like autoflower seeds. It's like the idiot proof version that doesn't yield as much weed, but it works. It's really fun to watch them grow. So that's my rant and solution. So I'd love to hear what you guys think about this because apparently also, just one more point, is that when I published this article and put it on Reddit, all these people were like, that's an American problem. Like, we don't have that problem in Canada because the way the weed is tested apparently is not, for every 100 pounds grown, there's a gram tested. It's a much smaller amount and a much more rigorous test. And perhaps the growing facilities are even more rigorously maintained for cleanliness. But the reason also all these pesticides and things need to be used on some of the plants is because like I'm from Florida, okay? So we grow oranges and we make orange juice to give to the rest of the country because oranges grow happily in Florida. I think that was the slogan. I don't really know. So here's the thing, cannabis, like oranges, needs a very particular climate to grow best in. When it's in that particular climate, it doesn't need all the treating processes that go into it after the fact to keep it clean. And the thing is, because of the way the laws are written in this country with cannabis, which is so, every state's doing their own thing, you're not allowed to transport cannabis from one state to another. So if the growing conditions are fabulous in one state and very poor in the other state's screwed because there's no shipping of cannabis legally. And allowing that would be like a really good start. Because if you look at the farms up in Northern California, where they have the perfect soil, the perfect air, the perfect conditions, that's how cannabis should be grown. And I hear people from Florida, from Boston, from just all over the country being like, we don't really have other options and we know this is a problem and we're starting to reach our tipping point. So thank you for listening to, God willing, my one only really serious podcast of this thing, because I just like talking about how to, again, alleviate suffering with the help of a plant. And yeah, I just think this is something to know, and really just to say one more time that I greatly respect Jetty for coming forward on something that they didn't have to come forward on. The pesticide that was used wasn't on the list, but they knew it was wrong. They knew the people who purchased Jetty, which is a little bit more expensive than other weed, we purchase it because it's better. And that was the right thing to do. And I think they did that internally. I don't even think they needed crisis management. So yeah, so everyone have a fabulous new year. enjoy your clean cannabis, and we will start growing together in 2025. And it's going to be a lot of fun, and we're going to learn a lot together. Thank you for joining me, and go take it easy for the rest of the year. Okay, bye.